a quick thing that I had brought up recently. So I posted the link to here, I believe, and trying to say how white deaths by police are more than black. And of course, the most common response to this is that the black and the white are disproportionate. This is almost, like almost over half of the white deaths by police. And as we know, black people make up about like 30% of the population, not over half. So it's like, oh well, that's disproportionate, that's suspicious, that's evidence of being targeted by police. But then, if you go over here, you see this is all estimated number of arrests by offense and race. 2016. Let's see. I believe I compared 2018. So let's update the table. There we go. So if you look at here, that old right-wing, quote-unquote, right-wing talking point about blacks making up more, like half the crime or whatever of the United States, this is all offenses by arrests, okay? So, whites 7 million something, blacks 2.8 million something. That is, a little bit disproportionate compared to the population. So, and then this is arrests. We have all the different things that they are arrested for. So these are validated charges of things: sex offenses, drug abuse, blah 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 blah. At the bottom they have a recap of just violent crimes, which white is 288,000 and blacks are 187,000, which is like almost half of this, which is really suspicious. And that's the whole popular right-wing talking point is, oh, they commit almost half of violent crimes. Violent crimes, not like all of good stuff. Because if you look at this is less than half of 7. But these are the numbers we should be looking at out of arrests, aka police interactions, and then these two numbers. So I'm bad at math, I used a calculator, but if you take the white deaths and the black deaths, and you find what percentage that is of these numbers right here, they both equal, where's the picture, to just about 1.2%. It's almost exactly the same. In fact, the white percentage is a couple points up, which you would expect because there are more whites than blacks. But this has nothing to do with the total population in the US. Absolutely shit all, so don't bring that up. This is only crimes versus deaths. And, of course it doesn't cover nuances like racial profiling and other, thought crimes that you can't prove a motive with. It's just covering deaths versus crime/arrests. So you can see that it's very equal in terms of how many people commit crimes and get arrested and how many people end up dead. Which, I think that's kind of interesting that it's the same percentage, whereas if there was other nuances, there would still be a disproportionate thing if they were if they were targeting black people. And I would insert other races here, but unfortunately this chart here only has white, black, American Indian, and Asian, whereas this chart is white, black, Hispanic, other, and unknown. So, I would totally go through all of them just to prove a point, but I cannot. You can access these websites on your own to make the comparisons. And, my point isn't, let me just be clear for all the lefties here, okay? My point is not that racism doesn't exist. I'm not trying to argue that racial profiling doesn't exist. I'm not trying to argue that racism in the police force doesn't exist, or police brutality. Those are all things that do exist and need to stop. And, most people, I believe, are working on it because of current circumstances. But my main point is that you are not being targeted because of your race in the vast majority of cases looking at this data. So yes, there are the occasional assholes who profile based on race, but you know what? People profile people on all sorts of things. Just working in retail, someone's suspicious, I've noticed there is no racial pattern to the suspicious people. There are white people, dark people, middle-toned people, male, female. It's not their race. It's a combination of things. It's a combination of how they're dressed, how they act, how they interact with you, how they interact with other people, being shifty, being shady. It's a bunch of things that the normal person picks up on. It's that quote-unquote gut feeling of something's wrong. It's not something about purely race. With some people, it is, because they're dumb. And maybe they had a bad experience, or their parents raised them to be pieces of shit. But in most cases, suspicious activity is suspicious for a reason. Like, if you're walking down the street, sketchy, looking at houses, and you're wearing like a hoodie, and you're kind of tweaking a little bit, sniffing your nose and shit, you're gonna look suspicious. Doesn't matter if you're white or black. I've seen some cracked out looking white people. White women, white men, they look cracked out, they look suspicious. I did not want to hang out with them because they were sketchy, you know? But bottom line, the media, I think, is honestly just fear-mongering to get some political gain. I don't know what that gain is. I don't know what their end goal is. They want to divide us. If we did just look at this data and say, you know what, maybe the media is hyping this up and just trying to make us all attack each other, and we came together and stopped trying to blame each other and instead blaming individuals for their actions, we might get somewhere. Because it's not white people's fault, it's not black people's fault, it's not anybody's group's fault. It's the individual. That person who decided to make the rape, the person who decided to murder somebody. It's the individual. So we have to examine our own communities, and I'm not talking about racial communities. I'm talking about the people we hang out with, our family, our friends, our communities which we live in. Because you might be white, but you might live in a majority black neighborhood. You know, that's your community, the people you live with. You know, go in that community and, you know, raise awareness. I'm a quarter Japanese. I'm not gonna go like harass a bunch of Japanese people I don't know. No, in my own friend groups, in my own social groups, I'm going to try to have my talking points put in. Same with you, the listener, whatever. In your own communities, you can make change. You know, if you know someone who's going through a hard time, they're contemplating maybe doing some kind of crime, talk to them, turn them in. I don't fucking know. But I mean, the big point is this whole George Floyd shit, especially with the recent release of the new body cam footage. It's fear-mongering, and there's absolutely no basis on which that it was racially motivated. And even if it was, that's not the point. The point is a police officer did something they should not have as a police officer, and they got arrested. Motive, you know, for the most part, should not affect the sentencing. If you violate policy, no matter what your reason for violating policy is, you should be held accountable. So, I mean, I'd love to hear responses as to why these are identical. I just want people to not be afraid and be like, oh, well, the fucking police are hunting us down because of our skin color. Like, no, that's fear-mongering. We're making people afraid of the police when they don't have to be. Yes, there are bad cops, blah, 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 we know the argument, but just looking at these numbers, there is no correlation between, like, blacks being disproportionately killed and whites being killed. If you look at this, if you look at offenses and arrests versus deaths instead of population versus deaths, and I don't really know what else to say, so I'm going to just close it here because I'm rambling, but it's just something to think about because it makes zero sense.